G'day everyone, John here. Got some exciting news today. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, been spending a lot of time thinking about the dust slot car box tyre truer, what it can do and areas for improvement. And it got me thinking that there's probably a few key things that would improve this tyre truer. One of the upgrades you'll see, something that's included on a lot of tyre truers that you can buy out there, the more expensive ones. But also there's another adjustment option that I will run through in a second. I don't think too many tyre truers have those out there. The kit will come supplied in a box. It is a free upgrade. You know, everyone should have them. Really wanted to thank everybody, those that have purchased a tyre truer. I really appreciate your support and feedback as well. Let's run through this kit. Like I said, I will be sending them out free of charge to everybody that has one of these dust slot car box tyre truers. We have a newly designed axle holder. This is the adjustment knob that will go into that side of the axle holder. Some adjustment knobs. They will actually replace the 2 lugs that have trapped the 3/32 axle in the original version of the tyre truer, and it'll introduce some adjustability there. We'll look at that in a second. I have included another 3/32 axle because I did start to glue these lugs, or at least one of these, on the ends of the 3/32 axle. So if you do pull that out, and I'll demonstrate that in a second, and one of those doesn't come off or cleanly, you've got this one to use as a replacement. Or if you can get that off cleanly and reuse it, you can use this one as a setup axle, which we'll run through as well. And the last thing in the box is a setup jig, and we'll use that to tram or level the what will be an adjustable axle holder. So let's extract and replace the existing axle holder, and we'll replace these lugs as well that hold the 3/32 axle. I mean, I've actually taken these in and out to test the new versions of these a few times, so these are quite straightforward for me to pull out. What I would recommend, pair of pliers. Don't worry too much about damaging these lugs because you won't need them ever again. And you can grab those on both sides, start giving them a twist until one side pops off, which is terrific. And in fact, this one, as I said, both have come off quite easily. But what you can then do is hold the axle holder here and pull the axle out. Now that should be a snug fit in that axle holder, so definitely use a pair of pliers for that. And don't worry, you won't damage the axle at all. Okay. Just remember there is a spring under there, so it could go twang and end up on your kitchen floor if you're in the kitchen like I am. So I've just reached underneath, held the spring to lift this out. This is not a useless part. You can keep it as a spare, but it just won't have the capability here, which I'll talk to in a second. So let's install the new and improved axle holder with the depth adjustment included. So what I'll do first is again hold the spring here and pop the axle holder in place, and grab the axle. And like I said, that should be a snug fit, and if you can't push it through with your fingers, don't be too concerned. You can always get the pliers and just make sure that there will be a bit of overhang on each side, because it is a 60mm axle that I've cut to size. I'll just jump up here and show you that. So you can see on each side I've got some overhang there, so you want to centralise it there. Just take this out of the way. So now that we've got the axle centred and it's holding the axle holder in place, the spring's trapped in where it should be, you're grabbing these 2 adjustment knobs. You can see there's a little indicator. So what we want to do is make them face forward toward the front of the tyre truer and so that they're horizontal. So what we'll do here, and I'll just do that now. You can do them both at the same time because you've got the axles protruding on both sides, which is very handy. And before you push them into place, Just have a look on either side just to make sure that they're both in that horizontal position. Not too concerned if not, because we're going to check the tramming of the axle holder. All you need to do then is manually push them into place, and they will stick out like that. They're designed to stick out like that, so that gives them a bit easier maneuverability when you do need to make an adjustment, but still be tight enough to provide a bushing for that axle and the axle holder to pivot itself. So all we need to do now is replace the top adjustment knob and add the new bolt with a little knob on the end, which will become the depth stop for your tyre truer. That might be a little bit tight as well, because I'll show you on another sample. Underneath here there's a trapped lock nut in there. I have taken some of the lock nut plastic out just to make these turn a little bit freely, but still provide enough resistance that it's not going to work its way out due to vibration. Put this back in. One thing I didn't mention is that throughout this process, make sure you still have your O-ring in the right spot and it's not trapped under the spring or anything of that nature when you're fitting this. I just moved it out of the way here so it would be a bit cleaner for the video. Okay, so now we've got our up and down adjustment. Happy days. That's the install part complete. So onto the adjustment of the axle holder. So the objective here is to get the axle parallel to the plate. Now, I'm out of the box. I mean, these have been pretty accurate, probably within plus or minus half a mil. But we can do better, and this improvement certainly allows for that. If you were able to reuse the axle, holding the axle holder in there, terrific. Grab the other one that was provided in the kit. If not, you can always just use just rip the back end out of a Carrera NASCAR. We can use as an example as well. So what I want to do here is I am just threading the couple of the bushings that are supplied with the original tyre truer, that is. Let's clip that on to the axle holder there. And what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to apply a bit of tension on the axle itself. So I'll just put the O-ring there and over the actual motor pulley, just so you've got a bit of tension. And I'll just line that up so you can see right down the middle there. So you can still see here we've got a clear path with this adjustment knob that we've introduced, so there should be no issue with that getting in the way when using the tyre truer. But what we want to do next is use the provided guide, and you put that under the axle there. So these two, you can see that it has like a chiseled end, or they go to a point. So the idea is to lower the axle onto them and just check that the axle is touching both of those at the same time. And the height of this has been quite deliberate. It's the height where this axle would be very close to the tyres, to standard 132 scale car tyres, touching the actual sanding block. So I have considered that as well. But what we need to do here now is I'll just lower this. What we'll do is we'll get some backlight as well, so you can actually see the gaps between the axle and the actual setup guide here. Actually, this is pretty darn good. So what I'll do is we'll get a light, introduce your light here, because that'll help us see what's going on. But you can see here and here that there is very little light. You can see I'm in a fairly evenly lit area in where this is set up at the moment, and so that looks actually pretty level, or trammed, as I said before. The objective here is to make sure that when you lower the axle to the sanding plate, that it is as parallel as possible. So I'll just introduce some light, just if we can see that. And I'm just looking again at the, I need an octopus. Again, you can see the shadow and the light there, there's a little bit of a gap there. But the idea here is if there is a gap, what you can do now is you can use either of these to raise, and I'll just show you. So you can see how I can tilt You see the right hand side's moving up when I move the indicated mark higher, or if it returns to where it was if I reduce it lower. But you can use them in tandem, like both of them at the same time, or adjust them one at a time. But what I like to do is like bring it up and just make sure that if you do make an adjustment, that it's not going to tip the bottom down and lift this one up, so then it's sort of putting unnecessary pressure on this side. So we'll just drop that down there. That looks pretty darn good, and you can test that by just moving that left and right, and you'll probably do the 3D printer paper test to see if you can get a piece of paper in between there, which would mean it's about a 0.2 mil gap. But I reckon I can do better there, so I'm gonna, because I did fiddle, and what I didn't show you, and I'll just show you from the side, is get rid of that light. The indicator mark on the side of each of these dials, adjustment dials. So you can lower or raise, because it's basically a cammed setup inside here. So it will move the axle on this side up or down, and the same on the other side, to give it some fine adjustment. But that, you can see when I'm moving that, there's still a bit of movement there, so I'll just drop that down a bit lower, and you can also just do that as well. So you can see this side still would be a bit higher. So if I was actually truing tyres now, this tyre would start grinding or truing before this, and that's probably what you saw in my demonstration video for this. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It gives you a full instruction on how to true something like that. So what I need to do here is I need to adjust again, and I've just, because this is higher over here on this side, I've dialed this down, and then I can adjust this back down to lower it again. I can move it left and right, no problem, but up and down, there's little to no movement there. So I think that's pretty well spot on. And proof will be in the pudding when you go through your next set of tyres and you lower them to the plate here. In fact, we can probably check that now. Let's do this. It's a long video, but I think it's worth going into the detail so people know what's going on. I'll just put these Carrera NASCAR tyres back on and get the sanding block, and that should be fairly close. And if not, we can still adjust it on the fly. You don't need the setup guide. You can see the light between the plate and the tyres, and they are touching down beautifully. I think that they need to be tweaked. You can just give it a bit of a micro adjustment and you'll be pretty darn close. I'm really happy with that. That is spot on. The second upgrade I wanted to talk about is the depth stop adjustment, which introduces repeatability when you're truing tyres. So for example, if I'm doing 4 sets of the Carrera NASCAR rears, I thought, well, terrific, I can set up one set, and if I want them all to be identically round between cars, I can actually, once I've trued a set of tyres or a tyre to the diameter I want, or I'm happy with the finish on the tyre, what you can do is then lower this stop, making sure that that's just touching the bed of the truer. So that way I can pull this out and return to the same height away from the grinding plate repeatedly. Just make sure that in between truing, if you're doing different size tyres, that you've actually wound this out so that you're not trying to sort of fight this and forgetting to give this some clearance if you're working with smaller tyres after you've been truing some larger tyres. Don't ask me how I know. If you'd like one of these tyre truers, please reach out to me via email, dustslotcarbox@gmail.com. Email address is in the channel description, but I'll also include it in the first comment of this video as well if you would like more information and get hold of one of these tyre truers yourself. For those that I am sending these out to, again, thank you all for your support so far. It's been terrific. I've learned a lot in the process, and I'll get these in the mail probably this week. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye for now.